Well, a very good evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking at this hour.
I'll be handing over to a chairman at whatever point that I exit from the scene, who will be the first, not the first, but a non-founder.
Infosys co-founders gather to mark 40 years since its inception. Nandan Nilekani, who's currently the non-executive chairman of Infosys, says he will pass on the baton to someone who is not among the co-founders of the company, wants Infosys to be a no-drama, high-relevance company without bureaucratic cholesterol.
I was completely wrong in that. I think I was depriving this organization of legitimate talent. So I take back that whatever I said.
N.R. Narayanamurthy says he was completely wrong to keep the family out of Infosys founders out of the company, says anyone deserving or worthy should be allowed. Stock markets tread with caution across the world ahead of the US Fed's rate decision. Sensex and Nifty end with minor gains. A CNBC survey shows Wall Street is expecting a 50 basis point rate hike tonight. Finance Minister promises to stick to the fiscal glide path, tells Parliament government will achieve 6.4% fiscal deficit by FY23 and is on course to achieve 4.5% deficit by FY26. BSNL to get more than 60,500 crore rupees through supplementary demands for grants, but there is no cash outgo and the money will largely come through savings and recoveries. 17 opposition parties walk out of parliament in protest after being denied a discussion on the rising tensions with China. Sources say old videos of Indian and Chinese forces clashing at the border are circulating on social media. These videos are not related to December 9th clashes in Arunachal Pradesh. Chaos continues across many airports in India due to overcrowding. This comes even as the Delhi airport starts to implement some new measures to address these concerns. Senior government officials say that the FIR into the AIIMS server attack highlights that the hack originated from China, adds that 5 physical servers out of 40 were successfully infiltrated. Officials say that data in the servers has been retrieved. The bankrupt crypto exchange FTX committed old-fashioned embezzlement, says John Ray, the new CEO appointed to resurrect the company. In a 4-hour hearing before US lawmakers, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is staring at more than 100 years in prison if convicted of fraud. MSMEs seek easier access to funds, more incentives to boost demands in the upcoming budget. MSMEs also bat for a new rating system that will not score MSMEs, especially the unlisted ones, like every other creditor. And former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan joins Rahul Gandhi at his Bharat Jodo Yatra in Rajasthan. BJP's Amit Malviya says he's not surprised and lashes out at Rajan. Well, let's begin with the day's trading action. The Lal Street ended the day with minor gains ahead of the US Fed's outcome. Nifty and Sensex ended 0.25% higher. Banks led from the front, with that index posting a record close for the second day in a row to rise above the 44,000 mark. Mid-caps also outperformed. Well, the big global trigger that the global markets will be watching will be the US Federal Reserve. It will be announcing its final rate decision for this year later tonight. Now, as per a survey conducted by CNBC, the market is bracing for a 50 basis points hike in a benchmark rates. Now, what's crucial, however, is Fed Chief Jerome Powell's post-conference commentary and their projections going forward. CNBC's Steve Leisman gets us the highlights from the latest CNBC Fed survey.
The Fed is seen hiking 50 basis points at the meeting this week and adding another 75 next year, and causing what 2/3 of the respondents to the CNBC Fed survey believe will be a recession. But there is a small contingent, we'll look at that in a second, that's optimistic a contraction of the economy can be avoided. Here are what we call the Fed expectations. 50 this week. The new rate is going to be 4.25 to 4.5. The peak rate is seen at 5.15. That's higher than the Fed funds futures market. So this group of 34 folks think they're going to be a more aggressive Fed. The final hike comes in April, and then the Fed cruises at that speed, at that rate for 9 months. Here's the outlook from this group. 388 now goes to 438. That's between 4.25 and 4.5. 5.15 is the peak rate. And then some adjusting going on towards the end of the year, and maybe some rate cuts through 2024, ending at 380 for December 2024. Here's the recession outlook. 61% think there's going to be a recession in the next year. The average start date is in June of 2023. That is, by the way, 2 months later than the prior survey, and we've seen that in some of the Wall Street forecasts, pushing it down the road. Average length is a pretty long one, 15 months, with 67% believing it will be moderate, and about 33% think it's going to be mild. Here's the GDP outlook, and you can see 2 quarters of negative growth built in Q2 and Q3 of next year. Again, that's a quarter later for the 2 negative quarters there. But here's a little bit of optimism here. Does the Fed tighten too much, we ask, and cause a recession? That's 59%. Sorry, that's down from 71%. Is it just right? And there's that contingent of optimists right there. 24% think the Fed gets it just right. That's up from 9%. It had been higher in the past. And does the Fed tighten too little and not get inflation under control? 15% down from 20. So a little bit more optimism in there. Recession, though, remains the base case for most of the 34 respondents.
Well, a quick programming alert. Get on the CNBC Edge on FOMC decisions. Our coverage on the crucial Fed decision starts at 11 p.m. tonight. Well, back home, Finance Minister promised to stick to the fiscal glide path. She told the Parliament that the government will achieve 6.4% fiscal deficit by FY23 and is on course to achieve 4.5% deficit by FY26. Now, government-owned telecom company BSNL will get infusion worth 60,575 crore rupees via the supplementary demands for grants, but there is no cash outgo and the money will largely come through savings and recoveries.
Fiscal deficit was estimated to reduce from 6.9% of GDP in the last year's RE to 6.4% of GDP in the current year's BE. This is very much in line with the government's commitment to achieve fiscal consolidation announced in the budget of 21-22. That is to reduce the fiscal deficit to a reasonable level till 25-26. And the current situation also very clearly gives me that kind of a feeling that we'll be able to comply with what we have said in the budget. Inflation has come and it is now come down and it is now in the tolerable band of the RBI. Inflation has been declining since April 2022 and it is declining further. CPI for November 2022 came down to 5.88% year on year, down from 6.77 in October. So I want that taken cognizance of.
These numbers are not seasonally adjusted and they do tend to get revised later, so I wouldn't read too much into one numbers. Monetary policy action, that I leave it to the central bank. Inflation, I mean, they have, RBI has made its own projections and they do take into consideration their own projections and in terms of what policy stance they would take. So therefore, that is completely in their domain. But as far as inflation is concerned, I think RBI's forecasts themselves suggest that they will be coming off the highs that we saw this year, and we are on track to achieve that.
Well, on to the other big newsmaker of the day. It's been 40 years since the inception of Infosys, the OG of Indian startups. Now, N. R. Narayana Murthy, along with 5 others, started the company in 1982 by borrowing 10,000 rupees from his wife, Sudha Murthy. Now, Infosys is valued at more than $16 billion. Now, the founders of Infosys gathered in Bengaluru to mark the 40th anniversary. Shireen Bhan spoke to the founders as they took a trip down memory lane. Nanda Nilekani, who is currently the non-executive chairman of Infosys, says he will pass the baton to someone who is not among the co-founders of the company. Nilekani wants Infosys to be a no-drama, high-relevance company without bureaucratic cholesterol.
I do have this huge responsibility because going back to his phrase of 2006, I'm the last of the jokers left.
Do you miss having the other jokers around?
Oh, yeah. It's no one to talk to. I only talk to Salil, but Salil is so busy selling that I can't talk to him also. So I think my challenge is a little more acute because since I have some founder's clout and all that, I can do some. But I'll be handing over to a chairman at whatever point that I exit from the scene, who will be the first, not the first, but a non-founder. And now there's no plan B now. I mean, if I hand over to somebody and it doesn't work out, there's no plan B. I can't come back at some 75 or something. So, and I don't think any of these guys want to come back either. So
maybe we should ask them.
You can ask them. Maybe they want to come back. They haven't told me. So anyway, I think so there's no plan B. So I have to make sure that when I exit the scene, I implement his vision of putting in place the leadership structure, people, and with the right values to take it forward. So that's really actually the biggest thing on my head.
And that's a serious issue, and I want to get you to comment on what you just said, Nandan, because as you pointed out, you said there is no plan B. In light of what has happened previously, what is it that you believe needs to be put in place to ensure that you get it right? Because this has been a challenge, let's be clear about that. And secondly, do you believe that in hindsight, and I want to ask each one of you, and Mr. Murthy, I want to ask you as well, that this hard coding that at 60 you need to move away, at 60 you need to retire, at 60 it is the sunset. Do you believe in hindsight today that maybe it should have been different?
No, I mean, look, if not 60, maybe 65, all that is fine. But look, at the end of the day, we're all mortal, right? We're not going to be around. And that's one of the reasons why we're having the 40th is we don't know whether they're there for the 50th. So, really, seriously, I'm not joking. Let's get this done because I don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now. So you have to, how do you create institutions that outlive you? How do you create institutions that cross generations? How do you create institutions that move from an ownership model to a totally professional model? In fact, when we first began, Murthy said, we will be the ultimate professionals company. I remember our first tagline was professionals company. But what you realize now is that, you need to have a combination of, professional ownership, all that stuff. So I think it's not clear to me what's going to happen.
It's not clear to you what's going to happen. That's
I
not very reassuring to hear.
No, I haven't found yet a person whom I can hand off to. Let's put it that way.
What is the timeline that you're giving yourself?
I'm not going to talk here.
Okay, all right. I tried.
I've always said that I'll be here as long as required. If you remember my first statement, I'll be here as long as required. At the same time, I don't want to be here that long. I'm certainly not looking at, 50th anniversary kind of situation. I'm not even sure whether I'll be alive at that time. So the point is this, that but I do have a huge responsibility because when I came, I could come. So I was there. I was just floating around, but I was there somewhere in the scene. But I can't say that tomorrow, right? So we have to make sure that it's done well. And then it perpetuates after that too. It's not just one transition, right? So we have to put in place a system where there's perpetual transitions, both of the chairman and the CEO. And, every chairman-CEO combination should have the same kind of trust and working relationship that Salil and I have. Now, that's a hard ask to think ahead that much because it's all about human beings and so on. But that's my goal. But I certainly don't want to be there longer than necessary.
Well, meanwhile, N.R. Narayana Murthy thanked Nilankani and CEO Salil Parekh for reviving Infosys. He spoke about the contribution made by Infosys to the IT industry as well as to India's economy. But when asked about keeping the family of founders away from Infosys, N.R. Narayana Murthy said he was completely wrong. He went on to say that one should not worry about who a person is as long as they are deserving.
I was completely wrong in that. I think I was depriving this organization of legitimate talent. So I take back that whatever I said. I think that every individual must have the same opportunity as every other individual if he or she is considered the best person for that job. So I don't believe in whatever I thought I would. The reason why at that point of time, probably I embraced that idea was because I was afraid that some people may bring undeserving candidates and put them in positions. And I wanted the future of the organization to be strong. So therefore, I was completely wrong. I take back that. I admit I was wrong. So today, my view is that you should not worry about what nationality, what heritage, whose son you are, whose daughter you are, as long as you have the best competence for a position. But you have to go through the proper process of maturing in the organization before being given before being given suitable position or suitable responsibility.
Paytm has approved a share buyback proposal of up to 850 crore rupees, fails to cheer the investors. The maximum share price fixed at 810 rupees, a 50% premium, offers little solace. The company says it expects the process to be completed within 6 months' time. The stock slumped 3%. The government has extended the deadline for preliminary bid submission for IDBI Bank to January 7th. Sources say that the deadline was extended after requests from the transaction advisor. Remember, the last date of submission for initial bids was December 16th. Chaos continued across many airports in India due to overcrowding. This comes even as the Delhi airport starts to implement some new measures to address these concerns. United Nations agency ICAO refuted SpiceJet's claim and clarified that its visit to the operators was not to audit or to inspect, but to verify the effectiveness of the Civil Aviation Authority's safety oversight. SpiceJet had previously claimed that an ICAO audit had found its operations, systems and safety processes to be in order. The impasse between Jet Airways lenders and the Jalan Calroc consortium continues. JKC has moved court seeking to transfer the ownership of the airline. However, banking sources say ownership transfer will only be possible after JKC makes first tranche of payments to the creditors, fulfills the conditions precedent and completes the NCLAT order. The FIR into the AIIMS server attack highlights the hack originated from China. That's the word coming in from the senior government officials who say that 5 physical servers out of 40 were successfully infiltrated. Anvit Srivastava is standing by with more details. Anvit, tell us, what are you picking up?
The security establishment officers who have been investigating the AIIMS ransomware attack have today come out and said that the ransomware which had infiltrated the systems in AIIMS were originated from China. Now, this has been confirmed in the investigation that it was Chinese motivated, and it was for 5 physical servers out of 40. The total servers are 160 of them are virtual, while 40 of them are physical. Now, police investigators are saying that it was 5 of physical servers which had been infiltrated by the hackers, and now it was on November 23rd, if you talk about the background, when the first glitch was detected in AIIMS, and after that certain Delhi Police Cyber Cell, all of these organizations had been rushed to the hospital. It was Delhi Police's Cyber Cell that had registered a case of cyber terrorism, and during the investigation now, when these equipments had been sent to forensic laboratory, it has been confirmed by the police and other security establishments that these ransomware that had infiltrated into the AIIMS system, they were very much Chinese motivated and originated from China. Now, earlier also it was reported that a 200 crore ransom demand was made via cryptocurrency, which Delhi Police has completely denied. There had been some demands placed, but police have not been talking about it. They have said that all the data that has been compromised has now been retrieved and is now in safer hands.
In action now from the Parliament, opposition parties staged a walkout from Rajya Sabha today after their demand for a discussion on the face-off between the Indian and Chinese troops at the line of actual control earlier this month was rejected by the chair. Meanwhile, sources say old videos of Indian and Chinese forces clashing at the border are circulating on social media. These videos are not related to the December 9 clash in Arunachal Pradesh. Former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan joined the ongoing Rahul Gandhi-led Bharat Jodo Yatra, currently passing through Rajasthan. BJP's Amit Malviya in a tweet said that he's not surprised and lashed out at Rajan. Reliance Jio has launched 5G services in Madhya Pradesh. State's Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan was present for the inauguration at Ujjain's Mahakaleshwar temple. Jio 5G is now available across most metros and large parts of the country. Jio has promised to cover the entire country with 5G network by December of 2023. Well, with that, it's time now to slip into a very short break. But coming up, MSMEs seek easier access to funds, more incentives to boost demand in the upcoming budget. Details when we come back. Back now, the bankrupt crypto exchange FTX committed old-fashioned embezzlement. That's the word coming in from John Ray, the new CEO appointed to resurrect the company. He said that in a 4-hour hearing before U.S. lawmakers. Now, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is staring at more than 100 years in prison if convicted of fraud. Kate Rooney now joins us with the latest. Kate, tell us, what are you picking up?
Sam Bankman-Fried is now in a correctional facility in the Bahamas after his request for bail was denied yesterday. The judge there is citing heightened flight risk for the former FTX CEO. He'll remain in that jail until the next court appearance. That'll be over arguments for extradition that's scheduled now for February 8th. Bankman-Fried was taken into custody late on Monday. That was the night before he was set to testify in front of the House Financial Services Committee here in Washington. He faces 8 criminal charges out of the Southern District of New York, with authorities alleging he defrauded investors by funneling FTX customer money into his hedge fund Alameda behind their backs. He's facing counts of wire fraud as well, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and campaign finance violations. The CFTC and SEC filed their own civil lawsuits, parallel suits, as well yesterday. And in a statement, his lawyer said Bankman-Fried is reviewing the charges with his legal team and considering all of his legal options. FTX's new CEO, John Ray, who led Enron through bankruptcy after its collapse, did appear before Congress yesterday. He ripped into Bankman-Fried's management. He called it just old-fashioned embezzlement.
India's micro, medium and small industries have been struggling for the last few years. Measures like the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme have had limited success in streamlining their revival. CNBC-TV18's Jusilia Kalayamparambil and Arundhati Ramanan report that at the pre-budget meeting with the finance minister, players have put simpler processes for accessing funds at the top of their wish list.
Weak credit scores. MSMEs say this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks when it comes to them accessing funds from banks and other institutions. And they've asked the finance minister for help in this area. Specifically, they want a new rating system that will not score MSMEs, especially unlisted MSMEs, like every other creditor.
We suggest them to change norms for unlisted companies who actually want to do the credit rating. And because of this credit rating, you can check with the private bankers. They always have their own checklist. They are not rely on the credit rating checklist, or they don't ask companies to go for the credit rating. So this is the major issue because all nationalized banks, they ask for this credit ratings.
Even 2 years since the pandemic-triggered restrictions were lifted, MSMEs are struggling to recover. They've been hit by multiple shocks. The government has told Parliament that as of July this year, 10,000 MSMEs have shut shop completely between 2019 and 2022, against just 400 that went out of business in the preceding 3 years. Increasingly, more and more MSMEs have had to borrow money to keep their heads above water. Experts say this increased dependence on credit is likely to continue through the coming year as well.
Today, we are in a rather delicate situation where the Indian economy, while doing better than most of the other countries, has definitely registered a slowdown. So in this kind of a situation, I don't see the SMEs actually leading the way as far as the Indian economy is concerned. It will be more of a kind of a supportive nature which are required. And therefore, the kind of credit or the kind of funding which is required will be more for existence, for survival.
A report by CRISIL says that 43% of MSMEs by value are expected to remain below pre-pandemic levels in terms of earnings before interest, tax and margin this fiscal. This is largely due to their inability to pass on rising input costs and unfavorable exchange rates to customers. In particular, pain are players in sectors like chemicals, dairy processing and bulk drugs.
There is an excessive price pressure when we are selling the product because most of the global companies are piled up with inventory and they want to get rid of the stocks. So on one side there is no demand and on the other side there is a huge inventory. As a result, there is a huge price pressure on us.
Some of these sectors also hope the government will offer help in the form of lower interest rates and restoring access to a wider market.
In this tough period, we are expecting some benefits from government. They have stopped the export incentives. So if they start it for the time being, it will be very, very great help to industry. And also the interest rate which they have jacked up, if they bring it down, then survival of those industries which have just started up, it will be very, very helpful.
MSMEs have also asked the finance minister for export-oriented trade incentives, a revival or extension of schemes aimed at easing liquidity and measures to boost demand, from a greater share in public procurement to a procurement approach that puts quality over price. In Mumbai, with Jasilia K, Arundhati Ramanan.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.